WayForward is an independent video game developer that may be one of the most underrated companies of the last 3 decades. In 2023, they are most recognized for their hit franchise Shantae and other adventures of the half-genie hero. So where did it all start? WayForward Technologies was founded in 1990 and focused on PC software design. The first piece of software ever released by WayForward, FunPack, was published for Windows computers in 1992. Although accredited to designer software, WayForward was able to secure use of Disney's Mickey Mouse and created Mickey's Ultimate Challenge for Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Genesis, Sega Master System, and Game Gear in 1994. The game allows you to play as Mickey Mouse as you wander through different fairy tales and complete challenges of various designs. This game, although seemingly insignificant, represented a pivotal point in WayForward's history. It was the first game they developed using the license or IP of characters they did not create. One thread through this developer's history is quality video games based on popular franchise characters, but more about that later. After working on Mickey, WayForward focused on more PC development, including a few more licensed titles, which focused on educating children. On June 28, 2000, Extreme Sports was released on Game Boy Color. The game features 5 extreme sports, including skateboarding and skyboarding. The art design for the game is credited to Matt Bozon, the co-creator of Shantae, and it definitely shows. The North American box art looks like it could be set in the same universe as Shantae, and it was uncovered that Shantae's sprites in the original game were actually based on the character Guppy from Extreme Sports. WayForward developed 2 more games in 2000 for the PC, another children's learning game, and Delirium, which is a mouse-based tank defense game. On December 1, 2000, WayForward rounded off the year with Sabrina, the animated series Zapped. It follows the animated TV series from that time. It's a pretty decent licensed platformer. Approximately 1 year later, WayForward followed up with the sequel to Sabrina titled Sabrina, the animated series Spooked. The game was very similar to the first game, but featured a new plot and some different spells as well. Sabrina's graphical style is very cute and cartoony, which would later become a WayForward specialty. WayForward also released a Pearl Harbor tie-in game released for PC, which not many people knew about. Wendy, Every Which Way was released on the GBC in later 2001. The game was based on Wendy, the good little witch character from Casper Comics in the 1950s. The game is a side-scrolling action platformer like many other WayForward classics with horizontal shooter elements thrown in. Because of its later release on the GBC, it featured bonus levels if you inserted the game into a GBA cartridge slot. WayForward Technologies also developed WWF Betrayal in 2001. The game focuses on saving Stephanie McMahon from being kidnapped. This game departed from most wrestling games of the time, as it is a side-scrolling beat-em-up with 4 playable characters: Triple H, Stone Cold, The Rock, and The Undertaker. Believe it or not, WWF Betrayal wasn't the only game that WayForward developed with The Rock as a playable character. On April 2, 2002, The Scorpion King, Sword of Osiris was released for GBA. The game served as a sequel to the Scorpion King movie, and was well received by critics for its interesting game idea, tight controls, and fun 2D platforming action. On June 2, 2002, almost 1 full year after the release of the Game Boy Advance, Shantae was released. Shantae is the true meaning of a hidden gem, with fun gameplay and a memorable soundtrack. It was just a shame that it released so late in the GBC's lifespan, and faced pushback from the publisher Capcom for being targeted to the wrong audience. The game was received well by critics, but simply didn't reach a mass audience. But WayForward didn't give up on the franchise, and that took real determination. On November 11, 2002, Godzilla Domination was released for the GBA. Domination served as a supporting game of Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters Melee, which was released for consoles of the time. It was a 2D monster fighting game with vivid sprites and fun structure-breaking shenanigans. The game was developed to be a stripped-down version of the console games, but with some WayForward charm. In 2003, another GBA platformer based on a license was released by WayForward Technologies. Rescue Heroes, Billy Blazes does not seem like it would be a good game, but it's really surprising what WayForward was able to do with the franchise, and plus you get to use a fire hose to put out raging infernos. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie game for GBA was the first SpongeBob released by WayForward. This game is a 2D platformer based on the movie of the same name and plays differently than the console versions. The really weird thing about this platformer is that it has a few Sonic the Hedgehog-inspired mechanics. Although not a fantastic game, the sprite work from WayForward is always on point and leaves me smiling. Late 2004 would see the first WayForward release of a Nintendo DS game. Ping Pals is very difficult to explain. It's a multiplayer dating sim, anime avatar collectible game. You can customize your avatar with hundreds of different elements, and you can even play with up to 16 players and have a chat with your stylist. Players must trade with others to complete their collection of items, which is a shame because I don't think many people gave this game the time of day. You have to give WayForward a lot of credit for doing something different. No one ever talks about this game due to the poor reception, but looking back on it, it's certainly memorable compared to most DS titles. And WayForward's pixel art is fantastic. I mean, look at those sprites. Not every licensed game from WayForward is a hidden gem. Barbie and the Magic Pegasus is a GBA platformer. It can be repetitive, but for a Barbie game it's still above average. On the flip side, Sigma Star Saga was released in August of 2005. Sigma Star is similar to Blaster Master. You control a space-suited protagonist that traverses a map with a blaster and also control a starship in side-scrolling shooter segments. The sprite work and soundtrack feel very sci-fi anime inspired and it fits the game perfectly. Definitely check this game out, it's a gem. Tak, The Great Juju Challenge was a side-scrolling platformer puzzler released by WayForward in September 2005. The graphic style of this game is out of the traditional anime-like sprites, and the gameplay is a little bit dry, not one of their better licensed developing projects. SpongeBob SquarePants, Lights, Camera, Pants was a SpongeBob-themed mini-game compilation which incorporated side-scrolling elements with various SpongeBob characters. The aim of the game is to collect stars. Imagine WarioWare or Mario Party but single-player with segmented levels. It feels short and a little bit uninspired, but the sprite work definitely stands out. X-Men. The official game for GBA is based off X3, the third X-Men movie. WayForward developed a side-scrolling brawler. What's cool about this game is the comic-inspired cutscenes and boss designs from the movies and comics. You can play as Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Iceman. The graphics feel unoptimized and lack the usual WayForward charm. However, this version of the game was praised for being the best even compared to console versions. Unfabulous. For GBA is a horrible licensed game. The graphics are pixelated characters with digitized character heads. The game is boring and confusing and has many rhythm game segments and bad puzzler ripoff. Stay away from this one. In October 2006, Justice League Heroes: The Flash was released for the GBA. This game serves as an offshoot of Justice League Heroes, which was a gauntlet-like action RPG for the PS2 and other consoles. In this game, you control the Flash as he speeds through levels and pummels bad guys. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up with fast-paced combat and fun action. The game screen is quite large, which means the character sprites are not that detailed and more difficult to maneuver accurately. The soundtrack is a little mundane and the sound effects drown out the music. Overall, this game is a solid licensed game, but not one of WayForward's best. In 2006, WayForward released not one but two different games based on the Disney series, American Dragon, Jake Long. Attack of the Dark Dragon was on the Nintendo DS, and Rise of the Hunts Clan was released on the GBA. You might ask yourself, why were WayForward releasing GBA licensed games 2 years after the release of the DS? Well, for one, at this point, WayForward had developed 11 separate games on the GBA, so they had really mastered its limitations and optimized its features. Between the two games, both are side-scrolling platformer brawlers, but the DS game had a 2.5D perspective and the GBA game was the classic 2D pixel art WayForward style. Sleek, smooth, and polished. I mean, at least you get to kick butt on a skateboard. Neither have any super unique mechanics. However, the GBA game is worth checking out. SpongeBob SquarePants, Creature from the Krusty Krab, was released on October 16, 2006 for GBA, and 2 days later for the Nintendo DS. Both versions of the game were developed by WayForward and play differently from each other. The GBA game serves as a collection of short levels with various gameplay types like side-scrolling shooter, beat 'em up, and a racing game where you control different SpongeBob characters like the Sea Sponge himself, Patrick and Plankton. Although short, the GBA version has the charm and unique sprite work of WayForward. The Nintendo DS version of the game follows a similar story with the same SpongeBob characters, but the gameplay was a side-scrolling puzzler that uses the touchscreen to progress farther in the game. There were also 2 handheld Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses games for GBA and Nintendo DS, which both are a pretty simplistic 2D platformers meant for kids. They really aren't anything special or noteworthy. Looney Tunes. Duck Amuck was released in October of 2007. This game used the Looney Tunes franchise, and specifically Daffy Duck, and is a collection of over 50 different minigames, and it's a surprisingly fun time. Within the next month, WayForward released Shrek, Ogres and Dronkies on the Nintendo DS. It's a pet simulator game with a twist. You can teach your kids new skills in order for them to be able to access new areas and collectibles. The overworld also has some mini-games sprinkled in for fun. The character pixel art is really nice to look at, but the polygons characters of the Nintendo DS leave a lot to be desired. Space Chimps was another movie game tie-in that was developed by various studios for different systems. WayForward worked on the DS version. It's a 3D space shooter and a 2.5D platformer. Not the best primate-based game, but better than most. Lit was released on February 9, 2009 for the Nintendo Wii Shop. This game might be one of the most unique titles yet. Lit can be described as a point-and-click puzzle game with horror elements. It was praised for being innovative, but unfortunately the Wii controls held it back. Luckily, it also was released on Steam, and you can still check it out with a mouse and keyboard. Mighty Flip Champs was another digital-only game released for the DSi as part of the DSiWare games. It plays as a puzzle platformer and was inspired by Wendy, Every Which Way. This game is notably the first game in the Mighty series, which would become another strong IP for WayForward. The success of this game led to the company releasing another Shantae game, which would prove to be one of the best decisions they could have made. On October 13, 2009, WayForward released A Boy and His Blob for the Wii. The game is a reimagining of the original game released for the NES. The game captured the original game's charm, but also streamlined control and made a great visual statement. The game was highly praised by critics, and helped The Boy and His Blob reach a larger audience. WayForward released a Where the Wild Things Are game for the Nintendo DS in 2009. Like many previous releases, they took a well-known IP and made a side-scrolling platformer that plays like a cross between Mario 2 and other basic platformers. The music was a little mundane, but the character models were pretty impressive for the DS. If there's one thing you should expect by now, it's that WayForward does not make the horrible licensed games that LJN did. Barbie and the Three Musketeers might be a hidden gem. It takes gameplay elements from Metroid and Castlevania, but implements the ideas in a unique way. Musketeer Barbie wields a rapier and she's badass. You can control her cat to help you reach narrow tunnels and solve puzzles. This video game went way overlooked, and it's a shame. Definitely check this one out. Galactic Tazball is a video game based on the character Taz from Looney Tunes, released for the Nintendo DS in 2010. It's a 3D platformer with a touchscreen mechanic for Taz's signature spinning attack. The game had potential, but overall level design and environment is bland, and gameplay gets boring and repetitive. Despicable Me. The game was developed by WayForward Technologies on the Nintendo DS. It's a basic platformer with puzzling elements that has you building a minion army. The game feels slow and unpolished, unfortunately, and could have been better for a licensed title. Batman. The Brave and the Bold is a side-scrolling beat-em-up by WayForward that kicks major baddie butt. It's stylistic, colorful, fun, and an all-around well-put-together Nintendo DS game. The character models from the cartoon work perfectly in a brawler, and for the DS system's pixelated graphics. 8 years after the first Shantae game, Shantae Risky's Revenge was released for the Nintendo DSi shop. This game took everything from the original GBA game and improved it. The music, Shantae's abilities, the graphics, and the fun all went up 10 notches. This game reinvigorated life into the Shantae franchise and was re-released on various consoles in the future. SpongeBob SquigglePants was released by WayForward in April of 2011 for Wii and the Nintendo 3DS. The game is a drawing-based mini-game compilation. The Wii version used the U-Draw game tablet and the 3DS primarily used the touchscreen. Although a bit basic and repetitive in gameplay, the visuals of the Nano games are stylistic and unique. Centipede. Infestation reimagines the original Centipede arcade game in a new way. Gone are the slow-moving worm aliens. WayForward made a top-down shooter with tower defense elements that has you destroying waves of insect aliens. Don't worry, there are still huge centipedes that service as the boss monsters. Infestation is certainly a fresh take on a franchise and worth checking out. Thor. God of Thunder was developed by WayForward and released on the Nintendo DS even after the 3DS hit the North American market. The game expands on the Marvel Cinematic Universe with a side-scrolling action game. The game was met with mixed reviews, but performed better than all the other versions of the game that were made by other developers. Mighty Milky Way was the sequel to Mighty Flip Champs. The fate of this game is really quite tragic. It was released on the Nintendo eShop on May 9, 2011, and unfortunately cannot be downloaded anymore. The game has you controlling a French green female alien as she flies through space solving puzzles while playing with gravity. The game features an amazing chiptune soundtrack by Jake Kaufman, who did many other WayForward games' music. Since the closure of the Nintendo eShop in 2023, this game can no longer be purchased. Hopefully one day WayForward can re-release this game which was lost to the digital age. Blood Rain Betrayal was a hack-and-slash platformer released in September 2011. It was the first Blood Rain game released since 2004. The visual style of the game looks anime with lots of bright colors and vivid blood graphics. This game was only ever available digitally and therefore was missed by many gamers. Thankfully, WayForward released an enhanced version called Fresh Bites for modern consoles in 2021, and limited run games released physical versions of the game. WayForward followed Blood Rain up with another cult classic game, Aliens: Infestation for the Nintendo DS. Aliens is set in the same universe as the blockbuster hits. It takes place after Alien 3 and the game has fantastic Metroidvania gameplay. The game is a 90s throwback and feels like what older Alien games should have been. This game is worth checking out for solid alien blasting fun with a bit of nostalgia. Mighty Switch Force was the third game in the Mighty series and it was released on December 22, 2011. The game is a side-scrolling platformer where the main mechanic is to switch between different platforms which change between solid and transparent. The game features smooth visuals with a jazzy soundtrack. It was previously only available on Nintendo eShop, but it was ported to Windows in 2015. Happy Feet 2 was developed for the DS and 3DS by WayForward. It's a platformer where you walk around, collect music notes, slide on your belly through snow, and attack enemies with dance moves until they start feeling the groove. It's weird and campy, but not the worst game out there. Hotel Transylvania was another animated movie tie and video game, and not surprising to anyone, it was a Metroidvania, complete with a bat form and wall climbing mechanic. It's not the best Metroidvania, but it's definitely a solid licensed title. 2012 brought the return to a classic franchise, Double Dragon. WayForward developed Double Dragon Neon. Billy Lee and Jimmy Lee return with a cyberpunk theme and flashy modern visuals. The game kept the old-school beat-em-up action with new moves and story. Neon was a fun romp down memory lane. I bet you didn't know that WayForward developed a Silent Hill game. Silent Hill: Book of Memories was released for the PlayStation Vita on October 16, 2012. Book of Memories was immediately met with differing opinions from Silent Hill fans. The game was a top-down dungeon crawler with multiplayer, which a huge departure from the series standard. Over time, this game has developed a cult following because of WayForward being the developer. and Silent Hill being an extremely well-regarded franchise. Perhaps the longest titled video game ever, WayForward released Adventure Time, Hey Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage? For the DS and 3DS. This game is a side-scrolling action game which takes inspiration from The Legend of Zelda and other classic action platformer games. You can even use the touchscreen to combine pancakes and syrup to restore your health. The game is short, but has a killer soundtrack and amazing Adventure Time sprites. In 2013, WayForward started to develop for the Xbox 360 and other current generation consoles. They released The Smurfs 2 based on the animated film. It's a side-scrolling platformer with collectibles. Gameplay is very basic, and the graphical style was unpolished. Fortunately, the next WayForward game was a smash hit. DuckTales Remastered was released on August 13, 2013. DuckTales Remastered was a 2.5D remake of the original NES title. It had an HD graphical makeover and original voice actors from the cartoon series. This version improved on the original in every way, and brought new fans to the game. The soundtrack is truly a chiptune classic, and it meshes so well with the old-school gameplay. Regular Show, Mordecai and Rigby in 8-Bit Land was released for 3DS on October 29, 2013. The game is a combination of levels including platformer, run and gun, and old shoot 'em up. The game can be repetitive and feels unfinished, but the game does have great sprite work and an upbeat, adventurous soundtrack. Mighty Switch Force 2 was released on June 13, 2013 for the Nintendo 3DS shop, and on October 17, 2013 for the Wii U. The game was a follow-up to the first game, but this time the main character is a firefighter instead of a police officer. The game featured many of the same mechanics as the first game, but reviewed slightly worse. It's definitely a game worth checking out if you haven't heard of it. WayForward tried their luck at developing for iOS with Drawn to Life. It was a port of the Nintendo DS game which was received worse by critics. After the mobile bust, WayForward had another hidden gem on their hands. Transformers, Rise of the Dark Spark might seem like more licensed shovelware, but this game was actually a really well-made strategy RPG. Once battles are initiated between forces, a 3D battle scene takes place that looked surprisingly good on the 3DS. The game features over 40 Transformers across Autobots and Decepticons, many of which are playable in the game. Shantae and the Pirate's Curse was the third entry into the Shantae series, and was released for the Nintendo 3DS in October 2014. The Pirate's Curse follows Shantae, who lost her genie powers as she teams up with her previous nemesis, Risky Boots, to destroy the evil pirate master and save Scuttletown. One difference of this game was the lack of Shantae's trademark genie powers. Shantae explores dangerous islands and finds secrets using pirate powers. The game's visual style and music are similar to the last game, but both remain to be staples of the series. Adventure Time. The Secret of the Nameless Kingdom was developed by WayForward and released for multiple platforms in November of 2014. The Nameless Kingdom was a side-scrolling action game similar to The Legend of Zelda, where Finn and Jake adventure to save 3 princesses of the Nameless Kingdom. The game features puzzles and menus, which were nods to the Zelda franchise, but was criticized for not being unique enough. The music and the gameplay can get repetitive, but it's definitely a licensed game worth checking out. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Danger of the Ooze was released first on the Xbox 360 and the PS3, and then 1 month later on the Nintendo 3DS. It was a 2.5D based on the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV series, and was inspired by the original Ninja Turtle video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Goosebumps. The game was developed by WayForward Technologies and was based on the 2015 Goosebumps movie starring Jack Black. The video game serves as a prequel to the film and was a point-and-click adventure game where the player solves puzzles and must avoid surprise encounters with Goosebumps creatures. The game was a simplistic graphical style, but resembles art from the original books. The game lacks significant music, relying on creepy sounds and effects to set the mood of the game. The game is solid and worth checking out for fans of the series and point-and-click games. Catgirl Without Salad was a video game developed by WayForward in June of 2016 as a Humble Bundle exclusive. The game genre is difficult to explain, but it's a cross between a side-scrolling shooter and a puzzle game which has elements of RPGs, rhythm, racing, platformers, and arcade games. The game is very unique and features cute characters and a killer soundtrack. Although the game is short, the characters, dialogue, and wackiness make it worth playing. Shantae, Half Genie, Hero was the fourth entry into the Shantae video game series by WayForward, which was released at the end of 2016. The game returns to Shantae having a slew of genie powers and transformations that allow her to fight bad guys and travel through difficult terrain. The game keeps the same Shantae game formula with small quality of life improvements. The game was highly praised and broke sales records. The Mummy Demastered was released by WayForward in October of 2017. The game is based on the Mummy movie reboot in 2017. The game is a Metroidvania game with an interesting death mechanic. When the player dies, they start as a new character and must retrieve their previous self to get all their items back. The game is fun and addicting and has a strong atmospheric tone with horror creatures and dark corridors. Spidersaurs was an over-the-top side-scrolling platformer and shooter that has crazy, vibrant environments, enemies, and cutscenes. It was originally released on iOS in 2019, but was later ported to all modern consoles in 2022 to fantastic reviews. This game is unique and entertaining and needs to be checked out ASAP. The Mighty Switch Force Collection was released in 2019 for modern consoles and collected all previous Mighty Switch Force games. Unlike many other video game collections, this one was well received due to how difficult it is to play the games in the series. This collection is a great jump-in point for people wanting to try a new series of games and to appreciate WayForward's IP. Shantae and the Seven Sirens was developed by WayForward in late 2019 for the Apple Arcade as a launch exclusive and 1 month later for Mac. The game was later released on Nintendo Switch, PS4, Windows, and Xbox One in May 2020. Seven Sirens was the fifth entry in the series and returned to the Metroidvania gameplay roots. Shantae meets 7 other half-genies that are kidnapped. Shantae must use her unique powers to solve the mysterious kidnapping and save her new friends. The game features a gorgeous intro movie done by the famous Studio Trigger, who animated Japanese shows like Kill la Kill and Darling in the Franxx. River City Girls was a beat-em-up developed by WayForward in 2019, based on characters from the Japanese franchise Kunio-kun. The main protagonists are Kunio and Riki, who must brawl their way from tons of evil's teenagers and straight-up thugs. The game had strong inspiration from River City Ransom, which gains players experience to increase their characters' stats and move sets. The game was received extremely well by fans and became standout IP for WayForward. Vitamin Connection was released by WayForward in February of 2020. The game is a co-op action puzzle game and was only developed for the Nintendo Switch. The game is bright, charming, and fun. The game has the polish you would expect from WayForward and is a joy to play. The game was reviewed well, but I think it still flies under the radar. Troll Hunters Defenders of Arcadia is a licensed tie-in game for the television series Troll Hunters, Tales of Arcadia. The game is a side-scrolling platformer which you play as the main characters from the TV show and fight various types of enemies such as goblins, trolls, and other magical creatures. The game isn't perfect, but definitely worth checking out for fans of platformers, and especially for fans of the Troll Hunters franchise. WayForward released another Nintendo Switch exclusive in 2020 called Bakugan, Champions of Vestroia. The video game is based on the popular anime series Bakugan, where players battle spheres that transform into different monsters. The game has you running around your school and town battling enormous monsters in RPG-style combat. This game is the definitive Bakugan video game and should not be skipped by fans of the franchise. This game is one of the lesser-known WayForward licensed games, but it's a shame because it brings their bold and bright aesthetics with fun combat and collectability. There are over 80 monsters to battle and collect. River City Girls Zero was a Japanese beat-em-up game developed by Almanac Corporation in 1994. WayForward, along with Arc System Works, developed an English version for the Nintendo Switch in 2021. The story is more dark and gritty than other games in the franchise. This release surprised many River City Girls fans and brought more attention to the series. River City Girls 2 was developed by WayForward in December of 2022. The game featured the same beat-em-up with level progress from the first game with all the original characters and 2 new ones. The game improved on the original in many ways, but still received mixed reviews from players, despite that River City Girls are a standout IP from WayForward. RWBY, Ruby. Arrowfell was developed and released on November 15, 2022 for modern platforms. The game is a tie-in for Volume 7 of the anime that the game is based on. Arrowfell is a Metroidvania game where the player can control one of 4 members of Team RWBY. The game also features multiplayer co-op that the player aims to defeat many enemies and acquire new abilities to progress in the environment. The video game soundtrack features strong tracks with vocals from Casey Lee Williams. This game is a solid Metroidvania for fans of the genre. Advance Wars 1+2. Reboot Camp is a remake of the first 2 Advance War games that were released on the Game Boy Advance. WayForward developed a from-the-ground-up remake of the classic strategy RPG games in April of 2023. The character portraits and voice acting is top-notch. The game highlights the anime graphical style of the original games, but takes it to the next level with bright and enthusiastic WayForward charm. The game is a perfect way to experience a great forgotten series with kick-ass music and visuals. In the summer of 2023, WayForward announced that they would be developing an enhanced version of Clock Tower, a cult classic point-and-click horror game from 1995. Horror fans were super excited about the game being available in early 2024. WayForward also announced they would be releasing the 6th Shantae game titled Shantae: Risky's Revolution. The game will take place after the original Shantae video game, but before Risky's Revenge. The development of this game originally started in 2002, but was never released due to the poor reception of the first Shantae game. Overall, WayForward has been a fantastic game developer over the last 2+ decades with no signs of slowing down. They have a great mix of licensed video games and original IP. What is your favorite WayForward developed video game? Leave it in the comments, and until the next video, peace out.